Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is just, honestly, it's mind-boggling. We are going to look at the unbelievable logistics and, quite frankly, the absolute meltdown of the 2026 Milan Olympic hockey rink. I mean, usually when you think Olympics, you picture precision, excellence, and world-class preparation, right? But what happens when that preparation completely falls apart? Well, buckle up because we are unpacking exactly how a highly anticipated international sporting venue turned into a $300 million mud pit. Okay, let's dive into this. To give you some context, think back to the Pyeongchang Olympics in 2018. Their hockey center was totally finished, ready to go, more than a full year before the games even started. Fast forward to the Milan Cortina Olympics. Get this, just 17 days out from the intended first puck drop, the person literally in charge of making the ice looked around and described the venue as having, quote, mud everywhere. 17! Just 17 days before they were supposed to drop the puck on January 19th, 2026. Imagine that. You're less than 3 weeks away from a massive test event for the Winter Olympics, and you're staring down at a floor of literal mud. It's wild. And the situation deteriorated so rapidly that by January 31st, it was officially confirmed that the arena simply wasn't going to be finished on time. So how does that even happen? Well, the reports described this whole mess not as one single failure, but as a symphony of different problems. Everything that could go off the rails absolutely did. And neutrally looking at the reports, one of the really peculiar observations noted is that the local workers simply aren't as easily bribed as Americans might be. It's just this really fascinating cultural and logistical friction point that added to this massive cascading delay. And we can't overstate the stakes here. This isn't just your local rec center running a little behind schedule. The conditions were so incredibly questionable that the National Hockey League, the NHL, actually threatened to pull its players entirely over safety concerns. Think about the gravity of that. The biggest hockey league on the planet was ready to enact a full-blown boycott of the Olympic Games because they looked at this venue and said, yeah, no way, this isn't safe for our athletes. Section 2, the $300 million snowball. To really understand how a totally sensible plan morphed into an absolute bureaucratic nightmare, we gotta rewind to 2019. That's when Milan was officially selected as the host city. The original plan, super simple. They were just gonna lease the Santa Giulia Arena, which was already slated to eventually become a permanent concert venue. Made perfect sense, right? But then 2020 happens, a global pandemic hits, immediately slamming the brakes on initial plans and driving up costs. A couple of years later, Russia's invasion of Ukraine further inflates the global cost of materials and labor. And that domino effect is exactly what brings us right to January 2026, staring at a literal mud pit. So the crucial point is that what started out as a very substantial but totally planned $210 million project just completely spiraled. It skyrocketed into a staggering $300 million frantic race against time. We're talking about a $90 million price hike for a venue that wasn't even ready to hold a single sheet of ice. Section 3, the science of safe ice. Because look, you can't just throw some water on the ground, crank up the AC, and call it a day. Building a professional hockey rink requires precise, incredibly demanding engineering. Step 1 requires a massive concrete slab installed with a super complex network of pipes. Step 2 involves circulating a very specific liquid through those pipes, one that's cold enough to freeze water but won't freeze itself. Then Step 3, you carefully mist down millimeter-thick layers of ice, one by one. And finally, Step 4. This meticulous misting process ensures the ice is completely air bubble free and hard enough to withstand the carving of pro skate blades. Basically, you simply cannot speedrun physics. And why does this perfection matter so much? It is all about protecting multi-million-dollar NHL assets. The NHL is effectively leasing its superstars to the Olympics. These athletes are worth millions upon millions of dollars to their respective franchises. So the league is taking a massive, calculated risk that their absolute best assets might get injured. If the ice isn't scientifically perfect, or if the building in Italy is half-finished and dangerous, the NHL simply won't risk their players' careers. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, the current busted reality. Now let's look at the totally scrambled, chaotic reality of the arena as it actually stood during those January 9th test matches. The list of absurd omissions is honestly kind of hard to believe for an Olympic venue just months before the games. First off, the rink itself turned out to be 3 feet shorter than promised. Those fancy hospitality suites meant for team owners? Non-existent. Out of 14 dressing rooms, a grand total of 3 were actually ready for the players. The top 2 tiers of seating were totally unusable, just covered in plastic sheeting.
You've got exposed wiring sticking straight out of the walls, and perhaps most incredibly, no joke, the very first test game had to be delayed because there was a literal hole in the ice.
Honestly, the condition of the venue was perhaps best described by a quote noting there was garbage and construction detritus everywhere. It really emphasizes the tragicomedy of the whole situation. I mean, we are talking about a world stage event, an arena that the entire globe will be watching, and just months prior, it's effectively an active, messy construction site filled with trash.
All this chaos actually led to a frantic workaround that got dubbed food truck diplomacy. Because the inside of the arena was so unfinished, they had zero working concessions. None. So to make the venue even quasi-functional for the test events, organizers had to outsource the arena food to food trucks parked right outside the building. Adding insult to injury, they also had to slash the overall arena seating capacity from the planned 14,000 down to just 12,000.
So what's the core takeaway from this entire ordeal? Bureaucracy wins again. It is a textbook case of bureaucratic friction, unexpected global events, and logistical mismanagement winning out at the total cost of preparation and functionality. The organizers promised a state-of-the-art $210 million arena, and instead they delivered a $300 million scrambled compromise.
Which leaves us with this final, somewhat humorous but entirely serious question to end our explainer today. Will the paint even be dry for the gold medal game? Seriously, when you step back and look at the sheer scale of this Olympic logistics train wreck, from the mud to the holes in the ice to buying food from trucks outside, it really makes you wonder how by the wire these mega events actually are behind the scenes. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating story.